Panoramic London asking, where does Bob think Fed funds should go to bring core PCE to Fed target at 2%? What are your thoughts, Bob?
Yeah, well, I think the question, I won't try and dodge the question, because I think part of it is like, I probably wouldn't even think about Fed funds. Like, it's not that interesting at this point because the Fed's not going to bring Fed funds anywhere beyond where roughly it is today, or maybe 25 basis points more anytime in the near future. So it's like, the Fed's dead. So then let's talk about what actually has to happen to bring core PCE down, which is you have to have, the main issue is that there's too much wage growth. Wages in the U.S. are growing at 5 to 6%. Productivity growth in the U.S. is about 0. The same is basically true in Europe and the UK, where you have 0 productivity growth and wages that are growing at 5, 6, 7 in the UK, even 8%, depending on how you measure it. So that's really the gap, is too high a nominal wage growth relative to productivity growth. That creates structural inflation. And so how do you break that? Well, you've got to create easing in the labor markets. How do you create easing in the labor markets? Well, to do that, you've got to slow down demand relative to the capacity. Well, how do you slow down demand? Well, you got to get people to start saving more of their income and spending less of their income. And how do you do that? Well, you've got to get asset prices down to start changing that choice between spending and savings. And so the thing that's really going to create the durable decline to the 2% PCE rate is getting a meaningful turn in the cycle, which is going to require a shift in asset prices, not really short rates. Short rates aren't going to move much from here. It's really about the asset prices. And I was saying on Twitter yesterday, just kind of like trying to work through, where's the peak in bond yields look like and what's necessary to bring the cycle down. I think we're probably going to need bond yields into the 5s to get enough of an equity market softening to change, to start to create a tipping of the cycle down in that sort of self-reinforcing negative type dynamic. And how are we going to get that move in the bond yields? Well, it's going to be a market tightening. It's not going to be a Fed tightening. It's going to be a market tightening. And that's kind of how this is going to play out, is bear steepening, market-based tightening affecting asset prices, and that creates the dynamic to get us to bring inflation down.
I love that. That's the first time I've heard someone clearly say that there's the implicit target of the Fed is to lower asset prices in order to put pressure on household balance sheets, and I guess corporate balance sheets to a different kind of extent, to get people a little bit less enthusiastic about spending and more enthusiastic about saving. We know that we still have a lot of leftover residual in demand deposits from where government deposited funds directly into people's bank accounts to make up for lost income during the COVID lockdowns. And we continue to see deficits running in the 6-7% range. And according to the Congressional Budget Office, we're going to see 6 to 9% annual budget deficits about as far as the eye can see. So, in the face of such a major fiscal tailwind, in your mind, does that mean that the Fed's job is even harder and they're going to have to get more aggressive either with their QT operations, with higher rates or current rates for much longer than people expect, or maybe changing the composition of their QT, maybe shifting into selling mortgages outright or some other type of action in order to get markets to react to the extent that they need to in order to get the consumer less confident and less likely to spend?
Yeah, well, I think in a lot of ways, the Fed being dead also, it goes to short-term interest rates. It also goes to quantitative tightening. Like, I don't understand why the Fed seems to be like having a brain blockage about flexibly using quantitative tightening. Like, those of us who traded through the 2010s, like quantitative easing went up, it went down. Like, like hundreds of billions of dollars on an annualized pace. We did twists. We did all sorts of innovative, interesting things that created flexibility when, interest rates were around 0. and the Fed needed that flexibility to implement monetary policy. And like we get to today, and it's like QT 95. That's it. Like, you know, we're never going to talk about it again. It's just it's like the problem we have today. I like to say we don't have a price of credit problem. Like price of credit's gone up. People have stopped borrowing, but yet the economy continues to persist. We have an asset price problem. If you have an asset price problem, sell the assets, right? Yeah. Do something more in terms of selling the assets, but they won't do it. And I don't know why. And I think they're just like scared of some liquidity thing, and it's pretty bad. Like this is a real error on their part, not using that flexibly. But what it does do is it means that, you know, in many ways, Janet Yellen is back in her old role. And the reason why I say that is because she controls duration supply these days. She can figure out whether there's going to be more or less duration supply. And she's essentially doing QT over the course of the next couple quarters in a way that the Fed, for whatever reason, isn't doing it. And so I think that's probably how this plays out, a combination of sort of just generalized market-based tightening and then Janet Yellen increasing duration supply from the Treasury is going to create that pressure on bond prices and on asset prices and create that turn in the cycle. And that's kind of, you know, we've seen a little bit of it, and it's hard, you know, these flows from the Treasury are going to be so big that, you know, that it's going to be, you're going to actually have to see the flows to impact the price. No one can front run the magnitude of this in the same way no one could really front run QE when it started. No one can really front run this. And I was reading a tweet earlier today where someone mentioned, you know, talking to a big bond CIO, and he said, there's just too many bonds coming. There's all these bonds. They just keep coming. I can't buy all these bonds.